Welcome to this explainer. All right, let's dive right in, because today we are unpacking one of the most unbelievable stories of the late 20th century. We're going to explore the ultimate story of a literature-driven hustle, and frankly, analyze the wild, comic book-style reinventions of a man named Malachi Z. York. We're going to look at how he built his movement, not as some genuine spiritual evolution, but as a calculated, incredibly deliberate strategy to maintain absolute authority. So it begs the question, how exactly do you build an empire out of thin air? Well, to understand how one man managed to completely manipulate his followers and the public for decades, we really have to look closely at a fundamental human vulnerability, and that is our deep, inherent search for identity and belonging. York realized early on that if you can control the narrative of who people are, you can control absolutely everything else about them. Listen to this quote for a second. He is one of the Elohim from the planet Risk in the 19th galaxy of ILU Win. I mean, wow, this outrageous extraterrestrial claim completely sets the cosmic stakes for our story. It shows you exactly how far York went. He literally wrote himself as the supreme superhero, an angelic being at the very center of his own universe. All right, Section 1, a master of serial reinvention. Let's rewind to his origin story to see exactly how he authored this sprawling mythology using a synthetic, plagiarized collage of existing beliefs. Picture 1960s Brooklyn, New York. This era and location served as a vibrant theological melting pot, bustling with movements focused on Black power, Pan-Africanism, and Islamic mysticism. Born Dwight York, he capitalized on this environment by offering something that moved completely beyond the traditional monolithic Black church paradigm. By opportunistically borrowing elements from the Nation of Islam, Black Jewish groups, and Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association, he essentially sampled whatever was popular to hook an initial audience that was just looking for an alternative spiritual foundation. Moving on to Section 2, synchronizing 1,000 identities. It's fascinating because we can actually systematically track his costume changes and aliases over the decades. Back in the 1960s, while leading a group called Ansaru Allah, he was Imam Isa. By 1969, pivoting to a Hebrew identity, he became Rabboni Yeshua. Then in the early 1980s, leaning heavily into Christianity, he called himself the Lamb. And right before 1993, he adopted the Egyptian name Neter Aferti Atumrea. Basically, every time he needed to keep his followers engaged, attract a new demographic, or dodge legal scrutiny, York would simply issue a total reboot of his persona. He brought all of this together into what we can think of as a massive comic book crossover event. We're talking Islamic Sufism, Hebrew Israelites, Egyptian deities, Native American ancestry, and yeah, even UFO lore. He masterfully synchronized these seemingly totally contradictory identities. By doing so, his followers genuinely felt they were part of an epic, chosen people narrative that spanned all of human history and extended all the way out into extraterrestrial space. Which brings us to Section 3, relocating to the secret lair. Every mastermind needs a headquarters, right? Even back in Brooklyn, York was actively building physical manifestations of his lore. We're talking stucco sphinxes, pharaoh paintings, and elaborate Egyptian-themed architecture right out on the city streets. This wasn't just decorative. It was a highly territorial move. It served to visually and psychologically separate his people from the outside world, perfectly setting the stage for total isolation. And that leads to a really crucial point, their migration. They left the urban, diverse environment of Brooklyn where, they had a history of severely strained relations with neighbors and local mosques, and they purchased a 476-acre plot in rural Eatonton, Georgia for nearly $1 million. They called it Tamaray. This brilliantly illustrates a calculated reversal of the typical Great Migration narrative. Instead of moving north for freedom, they left the north to establish absolute sovereign authority down in the rural south, literally claiming the land as the home of their ancient Native American ancestors. Let's look at Section 4, secrecy, rhetoric, and media. Once they relocated and started building this massive compound, York had to deploy a very sophisticated defense mechanism to manage public perception, especially in an increasingly skeptical post-Waco and post-Jonestown world. So how does secrecy actually work in new religious movements? Well, it isn't merely about hiding things in the dark. It's about actively shaping, presenting, and editing information to advance a self-identity. For the Nuwaupians, secrecy was totally weaponized. It made the followers feel incredibly special, guarding sacred knowledge and protecting them from a media landscape that was incredibly quick to label them a dangerous cult. To survive, York utilized a fascinating dual media strategy. On the public face, they offered the local community theme park-style attractions, family films, beach parties, and even voter registration drives. Very welcoming, right? But the private reality was vastly different. Armed guards, the issuance of their own sovereign Nuwaupian passports, and padlocked buildings that blatantly flouted local zoning laws. Naturally, this duality sparked a massive media battle, primarily with local Sheriff Howard Sills. York basically framed the sheriff as the ultimate comic book villain by crying religious and racial persecution and flat out refusing to show up for court while simultaneously giving defiant public speeches. York used powerful rhetoric to elevate what were essentially simple zoning disputes into an apocalyptic, cosmic battle between good and evil. Next up, Section 5, UFOs and Other Cults. When we place this in the broader context of the 20th century, we see some truly striking similarities with other new religious movements. Just like the Nation of Islam with its mother plane ideology, or Scientology with its story of the galactic dictator Xenu, York heavily utilized science fiction tropes. By tying Nuwaupianism to spaceships from the planet Risk, he allowed his disenfranchised followers to transcend earthly boundaries completely. He offered them a literally out-of-this-world pedigree that absolutely no earthly authority could challenge. It all culminated in a highly specific eschatological prophecy. May 5, 2003 was circled as the exact date a mothership would return to ransom 144,000 true believers. Extending their origin past ancient Egypt all the way into outer space was just a genius stroke of manipulation. It allowed the Nuwaupians to claim they were both uniquely Native American and completely supernatural beings. Finally, we arrive at Section 6, the hustle finally unmasked. But eventually, as it always does, the cosmic facade crumbles, and we are forced to look directly at the earthly, calculated motivations behind this entire charade. Stripping away the plywood pyramids, the stucco sphinxes, and the grand tales of UFOs, we see the dark truth. As one journalist noted after confronting him, York ruined lives, quote, in pursuit of the only gods he ever worshipped, sex and money. His so-called actual facts literature and constant serial reinventions were nothing more than tactical tools for communal and financial domination. They were specifically designed to extract free labor, material wealth, and horrifically, even the children of his most loyal followers. The unmasking of this supposed deity was absolutely brutal. In 2002, the FBI raided the Tomaré compound. During his 2004 trial, 14 victims bravely testified against him. The man who claimed to be an angelic supreme being from the 19th galaxy was revealed to be a convicted, ungodly predator, ultimately receiving a 135-year federal prison sentence for child molestation and a massive litany of very earthly crimes. So, what's our key takeaway from this explainer? Think about it. How easily can a synthetic, plagiarized collage of myths completely mask a dangerous predator, all because of our human search for belonging? It leaves us with a pretty chilling final thought. If we aren't careful, the very stories and groups we look to for our identity can become the exact cages used to trap us. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay sharp, and never stop questioning the narratives you're handed.